I was only a few steps away from the elevator when a hand suddenly grabbed the collar of my shirt. The force wasn't strong, but it stopped me instantly. My heart jumped. I turned around, annoyed at first, ready to tell whoever it was to let go. But the moment I looked into her eyes, every word disappeared. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held my collar, and her voice came out barely louder than a whisper. She looked directly at me and silently begged me to see something I had been refusing to see for years. In that moment, the crowded hallway around us seemed to vanish. It was just her, me, and a truth I had spent a long time running away from. 3 years earlier, my life had looked completely different. I worked 2 jobs, slept 4 or 5 hours a night, and carried enough stress to age me twice as fast. Every morning started before sunrise, and every night ended with me staring at unpaid bills scattered across my kitchen table. My father had passed away unexpectedly, leaving behind debts that became my responsibility. My mother struggled with health problems, and my younger brother depended on me while finishing school. There was never enough money, never enough time, and never enough energy. I learned to survive by shutting down every emotion that slowed me down. Dreams became luxuries. Relationships became distractions. Happiness became something I promised myself I would think about later. Back then, there was one person who always tried to break through the walls I built around myself. Her name was Emma. She worked in the same office building where I spent my mornings before rushing to my second job every evening. She wasn't loud or dramatic. She was simply kind in a way that felt rare. She remembered details people forgot. She noticed when someone looked tired. She brought coffee to coworkers who seemed overwhelmed. And somehow, despite my cold attitude, she always treated me with patience. At first, I'd appreciated her kindness. Then I started avoiding it. The more exhausted I became, the more uncomfortable her presence made me feel. She reminded me of the person I used to be before life became a constant battle. Every time she smiled at me, I felt guilty because I couldn't smile back. Every time she asked how I was doing, I lied and said I was fine. Eventually, avoiding her became easier than explaining why I felt broken. Months passed, then years. I buried myself deeper into work. I paid off debts. I helped my brother graduate. My mother's condition improved. From the outside, my life finally seemed stable. I even received a promotion. People congratulated me and called me successful. But success felt strangely empty. The truth was that somewhere along the way, I had lost myself. I had become so focused on surviving that I forgot how to live. My apartment was quiet. My phone rarely rang except for work calls. The victories I worked so hard to achieve felt meaningless because there was nobody left to share them with. Then one ordinary afternoon, fate brought me face to face with Emma again. I hadn't seen her in almost 2 years. When I noticed her standing near the hallway, my first instinct was to look away and keep walking. Old habits returned immediately. It felt easier to pretend I hadn't seen her. Easier than facing the guilt of disappearing from someone's life without explanation. But before I could reach the elevator, she stepped forward and grabbed my collar. Then came those words. "Look at me first." The sadness in her eyes hit harder than any accusation could have. For the first time in years, I truly looked at her. I noticed how much she had changed. The cheerful confidence she once carried seemed faded. There was strength in her expression, but there was also pain. She looked like someone who had fought battles of her own. And then I realized something even worse. She wasn't angry. She was hurt. There's a difference. Anger pushes people away. Hurt means they once cared enough to stay. Standing there, memories flooded back. The countless mornings she brought me coffee. The encouraging notes she left on difficult days. The moments she tried to reach me while I built higher and higher walls. And suddenly I understood what I had done. I thought I was protecting myself from disappointment. Instead, I had pushed away one of the few people who genuinely cared. We spent the next hour talking. For the first time, I told someone the truth about those difficult years. I told her about the debt, the fear, the sleepless nights, and the crushing responsibility that consumed me. I admitted how scared I had been of becoming dependent on anyone because life had taught me that everything could disappear without warning. She listened quietly. Then she shared her own story. While I had been fighting my battles, she had been fighting hers. She had lost a parent. She had faced loneliness. She had experienced heartbreak. She had spent months wondering why someone she cared about had vanished without a word. Hearing her story shattered something inside me. Not because it made me feel guilty, because it reminded me that everyone carries invisible struggles. Everyone. The strongest looking person in the room might be barely holding themselves together. The happiest smile might hide enormous pain. And sometimes, the people trying hardest to help others are secretly hoping someone will notice they need help too. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like these remind us how important kindness, understanding, and human connection truly are. Over the following months, something unexpected happened. I stopped running. Not just from Emma, from life. I started making time for people again. I called friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I visited my mother more often. I allowed myself to rest without feeling guilty. Most importantly, I learned that strength isn't carrying every burden alone. Strength is allowing others to stand beside you. Emma and I rebuilt our friendship slowly. There were no dramatic promises or fairy tale moments. Just two people learning to trust again. And somehow, that made it even more beautiful. One evening, months later, we stood together watching the sunset from a park overlooking the city. The same city that had witnessed my struggles, my mistakes, and my growth. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Not because life had become perfect, but because I no longer faced it alone. Before we reach the ending, I have one special request for you. Please comment below and tell us about a person who changed your life simply by caring when nobody else did. As the sun disappeared behind the skyline, I remembered that day in the hallway when Emma grabbed my collar and forced me to stop. At the time, it felt like a small moment. Looking back, it changed everything. Because sometimes the greatest miracle isn't finding success, wealth, or achievement. Sometimes the greatest miracle is having someone who refuses to let you disappear. Someone who sees the pain you hide from the world. Someone who gently reminds you that you are worth noticing. And sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a whisper that says, "Look at me first." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may need this reminder today. Because in a world where so many people feel unseen, your kindness might be the very thing that helps someone find their way back to hope.